Hello everyone, my name is John Schaefer. I am the Assistant Director for Graduate Student Success with the Graduate School, and this is a recorded workshop on leadership and communication, the power of the spoken word. So what I want to talk to you guys about in regards to leadership and communication is the fact that truly you do have something to say. And you have, not only do you have something to say, but chances are you have something important to say. And so I want to challenge you and also empower you to have faith in your voice. Some of the topics that we're going to cover in this workshop are, first of all, key principles of communication. So basically the basics of communication. And then the effective communication skills of leaders, communicating your vision, communication through social and relational means, and then communication skills through listening. So a quote from Gilbert Amelio, who's the president and CEO of National Semiconductor Corp, developing excellent communication skills is absolutely essential to effective leadership. The leader must be able to share knowledge and ideas, to transmit a sense of urgency and enthusiasm to others. If a leader can't get a message across clearly and motivate others to act on it, then having a message doesn't even matter. So what exactly does that mean if you break it down? So basically the key to this is, if you can't adequately and accurately and concisely share your message and have that message received as accurately as you had intended it, then the message in itself doesn't even matter. So you might as well have said it in the first place. So that's part of the reason, hopefully you're reviewing or watching this video is to gain some of these skills both in communication and leadership and pairing those two items together. So here are some key principles of communication. First of all, everything communicates. And what that means is that things that you say, but also things that you don't say. So what is that? That's nonverbal communication. That is, which is how you, your body language, eye contact, having a strong message, a strong voice as you are delivering your message, your actions. So not only walking the walk, not only talking the talk, but walking the walk. Everything communicates to your constituents. And your constituents could be a group that you're in graduate school, a team, a group project. It could be employees at work. It could be external constituents. So if you're working on marketing an item or an idea to a person or a group of people, noting that everything that you do communicates the message. And so everything needs to be in line. Everything needs to be saying the same thing. So if you are trying to get across a certain message, the verbal message, your nonverbal cues, your body language, and then the actions you take after that, all of that communicates the message, and all of them have to be in sync. Number two, model the behavior you are looking for from others. Again, this is not just talking the talk, but you have to walk the walk. If you are, as a leader, communicating a message, asking people to do something, then you have to be willing to do that as well. Or if you're asking them to rise to a new level or a new standard, you have to be at that level or above and meeting those standards or exceeding those standards that you're asking your people or your constituents that are receiving your message. You have to be willing to do that as well. Have a point of view. Do not be scattered all over the place. Focus in on your message, drill that message down, but don't vary from the message. You need to have a concrete point of view. Number 4, what you hear is as important as what you say. So what does that mean? That's where the listening skills come in. So in a sense, receiving the feedback after you have provided the message, listening is important. You have to listen to your constituents, or else you have no idea if your message has fallen on deaf ears, if the message has even been understood, if there's buy-in to the message. If you don't listen, you may be sending out ineffective messages, and communication is going to break down because so there's no recipient. There's no recipient of the message. You haven't communicated anything until you have been heard by your audience. So again, and this goes back to the quote, if a leader can't get a message across clearly and motivate others to act on it, then having a message doesn't even matter. You haven't communicated anything until you've been heard by your audience. They need to be able to understand what you're asking them to do. Bottom line. Number 6, communication and information, they both end in TION, but there's a big difference. Information is one-way communication. You are expelling probably not the right word usage, but you are, you're providing the message. Information is you are just dictating the message. So it's one-way communication. And for example, if you're reading an article in a newspaper or in a magazine or online, that's information that you're receiving. You're watching the news. That's information. Communication is when there's actually dialogue. So if you're looking at communication, then communication as a leader, that means the leader, as they're communicating with their constituents, need to be prepared for that dialogue and the feedback. That's the way that you have effective communication, when you have dialogue. Communicate courageously. So again, from the first quote I provided you, you have to have faith in your voice. You have to be strong in your message. So when you're communicating courageously, it means you are firmly standing for what you believe in. You're not wavering. And what that's going to do is cause buy-in from your constituents. Also remember that you are competing for attention. There are a lot of messages out there, and a lot more than there used to be. It used to be you received your information by, the nightly news, the newspaper, sometimes magazines, and now you have internet, you have email, you have people, you have social media, you have people that can access information with, at the palm of their hand. They have access to the information at the palm of their hand. So you are competing for their attention. So your message has to be, again, we're going back to clear, concise, courageous, all of those points to make sure that someone is paying attention, or multiple people are paying attention. Your constituents are paying attention. If it looks important, it must be important. So again, that goes back to the competing for attention, communicating courageously. You have to sell your constituents on the fact that what you are saying is important. So the message has to be, again, clear. You have to have faith in what you're saying. And if you can build this message up to where it looks important to your constituents, it's going to then be important. And then, of course, practice. Delivering a message or creating a message, it's not necessarily something that comes naturally to people. And so it's good to practice. Whether if it's a written message, then maybe having some people review it before, and maybe critique it before the message is sent out. If it's a verbal message, then of course practice makes perfect, and you're going to want to practice your delivery of the message and the way the message is framed before you actually deliver it. Lee Iacocca says, you can have brilliant ideas, but if you can't get them across, your ideas won't get you anywhere. So here are some basic communication skills. And we talked about the verbal and the nonverbal, that you have to pay attention to the nonverbal cues that accompany your message. Facial expressions, hand motions, body posture, eye movement. You need to make sure that you are making eye contact with your constituents, that you're maintaining eye contact. Body posture, you need to be secure, you need to look secure, you need to look authoritative, like you know exactly what you're talking about. Hopefully you do, but that you need to look the part, not just act the part, not just say the part, but you have to look the part. Facial expressions, you need to look engaged and interested. If you look like you don't want to be there, you're immediately going to disengage from your audience, because they're going to think, if this guy or this woman is here delivering a message and it doesn't even seem like they want to be here, why should I listen and why should I want to be here? So again, as I mentioned before, you're matching your nonverbal to the verbal. And what this does is it creates believability and trust. If the nonverbal cues are matching the verbal cues, you are building trust. If your nonverbal cues do not match the message that you are providing to your constituents, they're not going to believe you. So here's some more communication skills. So communication skills revolve around adaptation. You need to be adaptable. One thing to always keep in mind, and one thing you can always be sure of, is things change. And if you note that your communication, whatever message you're trying to get across, isn't making it to your constituents, so they're not maybe understanding what your message is, you need to be able to adapt to and change. Don't just say, this is my message, this is what I'm sticking with, and I'm not going to divert from that message. That's not a smart way of conducting business, basically. You need to be able to adjust and adapt to also to your environment. If you are delivering a message to different types of audiences, so you have different constituents, then you have to be able to adapt the way you deliver the message. Also listening, and this is going to be, listening is a common theme throughout this entire presentation and throughout communication, effective communication in general, is you have to be able to listen to the feedback and really digest it and then adapt and change. Setting the example, of course, this goes back to what we had talked about before, again, reiterating the walking the walk and, talking the talk and walking the walk. And then some other considerations for communication skills. First of all, develop your skills. I think that skills can always be improved upon. You're never at a point where you think, no, I really can't improve anymore. Me personally, because I do this type of work a lot, where I'm presenting over information at workshops and conferences, etc. I'm always trying to work on improving how I present, and that is communication skills. So it's developing those skills, and I may read articles on presentation skills and take some of those things to heart. Take trainings yourself. that's another way to do it. You can take trainings on not only developing an effective communication message or communication plan, but also the delivery of the message. And then consider trainings for others. It's not necessarily all about you. It's also about some of the people that are your constituents, maybe your employees, and empowering them to improve. And so if you have multiple people on your team that have excellent communication skills, that's only going to improve the delivery of your message to outside constituents of your organization. So the best leaders are first-rate communicators. This is Lee Frostheiser in an article, Communication, the Most Important Key to Leadership. So some more communication skills. This is actually a 5-step process. This slide that we're looking at, or you're looking at right now. So your communication skills. So number one, first of all, prepare how you're going to communicate. So what's your message? What is it? What are you going to look like when you're standing up there and you're delivering the message? Or, if you're maybe you're communicating through email, maybe you're communicating through social media, maybe you're communicating whatever venue, whatever type of medium you are actually delivering the message through. Prepare how that medium is going to take your message and work through that medium, how it's going to carry it, basically. Then, of course, you're going to deliver the message. That, to me, somewhat the easiest, one of the easier parts if you work on your communication skills, because you have the message. That's half the battle. You have the message developed, then you're actually delivering the message. Then, of course, the message is received by your constituents. And then you evaluate the effectiveness of the message as received by your constituents. And then, depending on how the message was received, you then can take corrective action. If, again, going back to adaptability, being flexible, maybe tweaking the message and seeing, if you deliver it again in a slightly different way, if you have maybe a better outcome or a different outcome. So the role of communication. Effective communication is going in all directions. So I use the term back in the day, but back, I would say 10, 15, 20 years ago, effective communication was considered top-down. So the person at the top of the pyramid or the top of the company or the top of the organization stated a message, this is what I want done, and it trickled down through. No one asked for any feedback. No one asked, so did you understand the message? And that's how companies were run for years and years and years and years. But now what we've found is effective communication goes in all directions. You have some of the best ideas starting at a very organic grassroots level and moving up through the organization. And then, of course, you have side communication. And then you have, upward, side, and then downward communication. So effective, again, all directions. Communication is also cited as a contributor to failure of efforts. Think about failed relationships, interpersonal relationships. What tends to be the most common factor in the downfall of any relationship, any interpersonal relationship? Chances are communication. And so you need to keep that in mind. Know that communication is a very complex process. It's not it's not simple, it's not cut and dry. Careful communication involves planning and management, and you need clarity and consistency in your message. So your message has to be from the moment it's delivered, has to be consistent throughout the remainder of the time that message is of importance to you and to your constituents until the message changes. Now again, as I mentioned before, there may be little tweaks, little alterations to the message, but the core of the message, the point, the goal of the message needs to remain the same. And it needs to be clear. Again, if your constituents, your employees, your team members do not understand what you are trying to say, then there is no point in even having delivered the message in the first place. So, and leaders as communicators. So if you're a leader and a communicator, then you are leading, self-explanatory. You are involving, so you are getting your constituents involved in the message. Your employees, your team members, you're getting the buy-in, you're getting them involved in helping relay the message to others. You're listening for feedback. You are informing, obviously, part of communication is information. And so you are informing people with your message and you're engaging them. You are again, getting them involved, but really engaging them in the message, making known that this is a dialogue, not a one-way communication. Here are some barriers to communication. And I'm just going to go through these. I don't think a lot of them require a lot of description. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Again, think dialogue, not monologue. This is a two-way communication, not a one-way communication. There's going to be a barrier to communication if you have a lack of respect from either party. So from the person delivering the message or the person receiving the message. If there's a lack of respect, that's going to be a barrier. Lack of trust, same thing. If you have a poorly defined purpose, so the initial idea or the concept of the message was not well thought through. Failure to use best communication medium. So you deliver a message via, let's say, email, and actually the message may have gone out better via social media, for example. You've assumed that the message has been received, for which it has not, and we've talked about that. You've ignored emotions, and we're going to actually talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Failure to level of understanding. So, again, the message was not received, was not understood. So there was an absolute failure there. And then intimidation. So if the person delivering the message is intimidating his constituents or her constituents, then it's less likely that the message is going to be received accurately and effectively, because they really don't want to hear what you have to say, because you're using intimidation factors. So your message can get skewed with the fact that you are intimidating along with delivering the message. So the next quote, the task of leadership is to communicate clearly and repeatedly the organization's vision, all with the intent of helping every person involved understand what work needs to be done and why, and what part the individual plays in the overall effort. It's from Fundamentals of Leadership, Communicating the Vision from Writing Assistants Incorporated. So now we're going to be talking about vision. So, this is from usually a larger organizational standpoint, communicating the vision. Communicating a message can be from an individual. Communicating, or an individual to an individual or an individual to a group. Communicating the vision usually more encompasses a larger organizational structure. So again, you've heard this time and time again throughout the presentation, clear and concise. The vision needs to be clear and concise. The vision needs to resonate with your audience, and your stakeholders, which are your constituents. They need to believe in what you're saying. If you have complicated concepts, you need to be able to boil those down and drill those down into a few simple phrases that get the point across. And then, of course, you have something called multimodality, which includes what you say is really only the beginning of the process. Just because you've delivered the initial message doesn't mean it stops there. This whole part of delivering the message and walking the walk and talking the talk and being consistent, that has to do with multimodality. You also are creating a consistent message, and you're leading by example. And we've talked about these throughout this, or I've talked about these throughout this presentation. I am a firm believer that a picture says 1,000 words. And oftentimes, if you're delivering a vision to constituents, sometimes you can simply put an image up on a screen and it's going to say everything you need. Do you need a bunch of words in a PowerPoint? Not necessarily. Do you need to flood your constituents or your stakeholders with a bunch of a wordy email? Not necessarily. Maybe a picture and a few words. Like, for example, what does this picture say to you? Just think, take a couple seconds, think of a few words that immediately you think of when you see this picture. So what I think of is freedom, no barriers, soaring to new heights, strength, persistence. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. And you're also possibly resonating with a single image. You can resonate with, your message will resonate with your audience. They will totally buy in to what you're trying to say if you pick the right illustration, for lack of a better word. This picture, again, take a couple seconds and what does this picture say to you? So to me, this one says serene, tranquil, limitless possibilities, quiet. Again, any number of things. If you're trying to get across a certain message, and your message is serenity, for example, this might be a good image to use along with a few keywords. So communicating your vision, this is part of communicating a vision includes conversational leadership. And that includes the 4 I's: intimacy, interactivity, inclusion, and intentionality. And intimacy includes trust, being authentic, and also listening. So that's the intimacy part. Interactivity is dialogue, so you're, the two-way communication. Inclusion is, of course, involvement. Getting your constituents involved to buy into the message and take the message further. And then intentionality, of course, is the goal. What's the goal of the vision? And are you achieving that goal? I did want to give you an example, and we'll go back to how something very simple can create and can resonate with people. there is, and I'm sure many of you have heard or if I ask, what is the theme or the motto or the message of the University of Texas at San Antonio, meaning UTSA? What is that message? It's all over everywhere. It's on commercials, it's on banners around the campus. That message is, if you haven't already said it in your head already, is we are UTSA. It's a very simple message, and it resonates not only with the campus community, but the San Antonio community at large, because of the way that they have utilized the message. They have utilized it in regards to, we are research, we are leaders, we are academics, we are athletics, we are San Antonio. Now, you know that there are other institutions, actually a number of them, either very close to San Antonio, much less within San Antonio. I can think of 4 other institutions, higher ed institutions in San Antonio alone, not including the community colleges. I'm talking about 4-year universities. But UTSA is the one who is We Are San Antonio. So that creates a tie with the community. So in turn, when you're looking at raising revenue for the institution, recruitment of students, and raising money through possibly research or for research, or through the capital campaign to raise money for scholarships, etc., that resonates. I know I'm an alumni of UTSA, and I also work here, and that message resonates with me, and it's very simple. And actually, the communications, the area university advancement that came up with this motto actually had a lot of different more lengthy mottos or slogans on the table that they were working through, and I believe they even conducted focus groups on these various slogans. And We Are UTSA is the one that ended up resonating with the most people. And it actually was a happy accident, because it started off with a commercial for UTSA that was the theme of the commercial, and it resonated. And so suddenly the university adopted that as their battle cry, for lack of a better phrase. So let's talk about social and relational communication. And the characteristics of this type of communication are that it's intuitive and gut thinking. So you're thinking from your gut. The message or the communicator does actually care for how any decisions that they're making affect people. Social and relational communication includes collaborative and a team-focused approach. There is a desire to work through interpersonal relationships, so it's less formal professional relationships. And the ability to connect ideas and work to people. So you're working with people instead of numbers. So each person, you're working with individuals. So each person is different. The communicator realizes that and works within those interpersonal relationships to relay the message. The thing is, most leaders don't think this way. And I would say that a number of people that are heads of companies, many of them would say it creates too much vulnerability on the part of the person delivering the message, and which can cause people to maybe have less confidence, because they see more vulnerability than strength. Personally, I think finding the balance is key, because with social and relational communication, how to accomplish this is you can't be afraid to feel. You think personal communication is first and foremost. It's okay to be vulnerable, and you always want to show gratitude and appreciation. Now that last one, absolutely, absolutely. Always showing gratitude and appreciation for people that are doing a good job for you. It also boosts them up and makes them want to continue doing a good job. But again, I think there is a balance between a strong leader delivering a message does not necessarily have to be, or a strong leader delivering a message who is invulnerable, who is not vulnerable, and then another type of leader that fits into the social and relational communication type of leader who can be actually seen as a pushover. Now, that may not actually be the case. The person may not be a pushover, but they may be perceived that way, which then lessens the strength of the message, in my opinion. So I think having a balance, being a compassionate leader, I don't think, where you can show strength, but you can also show vulnerability, I think is important. And so some listening facts that I want to go over with you are, first of all, there's a listening rate of, before we get into listening, there's a listen rate of 125 to 250 words per minute. And then people think at 1,000 to 3,000 words per minute. And 55% of word meaning is in facial expression, 38% is in how words are said, and 7% is in actual words spoken. Now, a study of Fortune 100 companies found that workers send and receive about 1,800 messages each day. So they are receiving or hearing 1,800 messages per day. So you are competing with this. But also, again, keep in mind, with the listening rate and then the thinking rate. But the listening rate is fairly low compared to the thinking rate. But then also note the 55% of word meaning is in facial expression. So, and 7% is in actual words spoken. So this is where your nonverbal needs to definitely match your verbal, because if it's not, your word meaning is getting lost 55% of the time. So here's some effective listening skills. First of all, talk less. Secondly, focus on the message that you are receiving as the listener. Withhold judgment. Let them finish. Let the person who is talking to you finish before you turn around and respond to the message you're listening to. Capture the idea. Totally understand and comprehend what the person is telling you. Wait for them to finish before responding, and then feel free to provide feedback. However, strategies for providing feedback, make sure you are not advising, judging, or analyzing. Those are ineffective listening strategies. The effective listening strategies are probing, being supportive, prompting the person, and paraphrasing. So probing is where you are kind of trying to, they're telling you, they're talking to you about a certain topic, and you're actually trying to drill down. So you're asking key questions to get additional information. Being supportive is, of course, I understand what you're saying. This is something definitely that we can continue talking about, stuff like that. Prompting is kind of, so what you're trying to say is, and that goes again with paraphrasing, but prompting them is, again, getting them to continue. And then paraphrasing is then taking what they're saying and boiling it down and replying to them and making sure that you guys are on the same page. And then, of course, as I mentioned, ineffective is advising when they're not asking for it, judging what they're saying, and analyzing every word that's coming out of their mouth. And then, think to yourself, what are some actual barriers to listening? What things get in the way? And try to get rid or get away from those types of barriers while you're in a dialogue communication exchange. So one of the things normally in workshops, I do a sum up slide and I talk about the important key points of the presentation. But because I finished this workshop with communication listening skills, as a leader, what are you going to take away from this presentation? What were the important points that you heard that you think are important for you to know and for you to possibly implement in your own leadership skills or strategies? Final thought to leave you with: subscribers to the Harvard Business Review rated the ability to communicate the most important fact in making an executive promotable, more important than ambition, education, and hard work. You have to have the communication skills. Any leader has to have effective communication skills. I say this at the end of every one of the workshops that I record. If you would like a copy of this workshop emailed to you, feel free to contact me and I can send you an electronic version of this presentation. My email is john, John, .Schaeffer, SHAFFER, @utsa.edu. You can feel free to email me and I can respond in kind with a copy of the presentation. Thank you for attending this workshop on leadership and communication, and I hope you got a lot out of the information.